We're LiveCue. My name is Isabel Froelich.
I am Carroll.
And I'm Derek Leuw.
And let's go.
Cool. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. So we are LiveCue, and our goal is to help speakers prepare, perform, and improve during their presentations. So I'll go ahead and talk you through our motivation and our pitch. So the problem is that presentations are really stressful. How many times have you been standing up there and forgotten what you're supposed to say, or whether or not you've already said it? It's really easy to miss things, and then that can cause issues for future slides if you miss a key item. So we wanted to create meaningful feedback, which also meaningful feedback tends to require a lot of time and participation from others. You have to convince someone to sit in on your presentation, take notes, walk through those notes with you. That's hard to get. And also, existing solutions can be expensive and may require sharing personal data that you're not comfortable sharing. And most feedback comes after the presentation, which limits opportunities for immediate improvement. One of our biggest competitors would be like a Microsoft PowerPoint presentation coach, which again is behind a paywall. And then also, if you're not using Microsoft Slides, you'll run into issues. So our solution is to help users practice independently with automated feedback so they don't have to rely on a friend or buddy watching their presentation. And then you also receive guidance before, during, and after the presentation. So you have someone there with you every step of the way, so that way your presentation can be really, really solid. We also want to keep presentation data local and under user control in case you have privacy concerns. And we also wanted to reduce the need for expensive subscription services. Again, we're not hiding behind any paywalls. We're trying to make everything free and really easy to use. And then our main goal is to help speakers build confidence through continuous improvement. So we make it really easy to keep iterating on your slides, working through things, and getting better. So I'll go ahead and pass it over to Mendel to do our live demo.
Alrighty, yeah, thanks Isabel. So the goal of our live demo, just in case anything passes by too quickly, is in the pre-presentation stage, we're gonna be logging into Google. That way we're authenticated, and then we can pull over all of your Google slides. Then we're gonna upload a slide, and then we're gonna receive some preparation suggestions that is courtesy from our builder schema. Then we're going to build a single slide with some slide goals. We're going to get into that a little bit more in the future, so if that doesn't make sense yet, don't worry. And then we're going to move into the mid-presentation. So I'll give over a presentation. We'll see as things live cue us as we are speaking, and hopefully see some goals getting completed. Finally, we're going to do a post-presentation breakdown. It's going to display a bunch of session summaries with metrics, and hopefully some useful recommendations on how you can improve in the future. Okay, can everyone see this? Welcome to LiveCue. You are in your home dash. This is a live URL, so if you want to check it out after this presentation and play around with it and give us feedback, that would be greatly appreciated. So this is your main workspace. This is your homepage. It should feel a little bit familiar. We are trying to make it very user-friendly, so we took great inspiration from Google in a bunch of ways, but this is very much your own space, and you get to customize it a lot. First thing that we're going to do is we can sign in with Google. Which one is a good one? This is not Gmail. Gmail. Okay, cool. AV technical issues. So we're now loading our workflow. You can see that we already have a couple things already booted up, but we want to import some new slides. So as we like to do, we are going to be a little meta, and we're going to pull in our slides from this exact deck that we are presenting on today. So we can copy the link and head back over to Chrome, input your URL over here. It's loading it up. Could not find that deck.
Oh, because Derek's on that deck.
Sorry, I was on the
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry. Couple technical issues. Yeah, let's make sure we get the correct one. So this is cool. You can have multiple different Google accounts connected into your thing. So if you happen to need certain things to be in certain places, you can pull just those slide decks. That's a bit of our authentication process. So the second you import, it starts importing in the background, so you can play around, work on your other slide decks, whatever it is that you want to do in the LiveCue environment. We've got it loaded up. So you can go to edit, that's going to jump you into the builder schema. Feedback, we're going to see that feature a little bit more in the future, or you could just go straight to presenting. We're going to go to edit and see how the builder schema works. Cool. So this will boot up all your slides over here on the left-hand side. And then you have a couple different useful stuff at the top level that will work on your entire slide deck. And then you have things that will work on just individual slides at a time. So you have your slide notes. We're pulling that in from Google. But you can make changes over here, like hello. And that will pop up on your Google slide deck back. So there is a good relationship between these two things. So you can pass back notes, so everything stays up to date on both ends. We do try and push the user to do a demo of each individual slide. This is a part of our push to help people do better presentation practices, and amongst that is doing a demo. So you record yourself. It's going to display your transcript right over here, so we can do that right now. Hello, I am Mendel Carroll, and I am trying to see if this records correctly. Let's see if it works correctly. It missed the top out because I didn't allow it. Cool, yeah, so now that we have some stuff over here, we can generate, let's remove this transcript because this is actually context that is a part of generating your presentation goals, which is the next most important part of the builder schema, is you're trying to build out goals that you're going to be reaching during your presentation. So these are supposed to be non-invasive. They're supposed to be very simple, easy, one-tag lines that help you to remember or cue you to what you're supposed to be doing inside that given slide. We are still generating. Could just be some network stuff. All right, here we go. We have a couple bullet points. This is just on like the front screen that we heard Isabel just present earlier. So very simple, just introducing us to the audience, engaging the audience with a friendly greeting. It really, we've prompted it with a bunch of like best presentation practices, which is how it's getting all this information. We're going to save this. This launches it into our database, which is a PostgreSQL database homebrewed by Supabase. And now let's go into presentation mode. So you get two tabs that open up for you over here. One is going to be the actual slide, so you can show that to your audience. But what we're more interested in today is the forward-facing, the one that's facing the actual user of this program. So I can go ahead and start a session. So we are now recording live. I'm going to pretend like Isabel was presenting earlier. Hi, we're LiveCue. Our purpose is helping speakers prepare, perform, and improve better presentations. That is our tagline. That is our business model at LiveCue. And a friendly greeting, hi, everybody. It could take a minute. Again, we were seeing like network delays earlier. Hopefully this will start to update soon. OK. It's realized that we've introduced LiveCue and its purpose to the audience. In the interest of time, I'm going to... Oh, it got us all done. OK, great. We can end session, but a little indicator over here was our time score that was telling us how we were going along the slide. It would go into the red if we were going over our time. Our presentation session has ended. It says now that it has generated feedback for us, so we can go and review that. All right, so it gives you time splits. We only went over one slide, so it's only giving us information for one slide. The big feature of the feedback tool is that you create an audience vignette of who it is that you're trying to get feedback from. So you can type in like, I am a CSE 333 student, and this is the first time I'm ever learning about this topic. And then it should give you feedback focused on that vignette. So let's just do a very simple one. This might not be great, but we'll do just a person. We can save that. And then we can generate feedback from that. It's going to go ahead. We didn't give it a lot of context. We only recorded for a single slide. It might say we did really well on that slide. Likely, it'll say that we did really well on that slide. OK, so yeah, so the key features we were trying to take away is an audience takeaway, content priorities, engagement, and accessibility. All these things were fed into the model to make sure that it specifically knows what are the parameters that we're looking for each one of these. This is not going to be the most amazing feedback because we just did it on a single slide, but I have tested this out on a larger audience with engagement, and we got some pretty good back and forth feedback on things that I can actually actionably do to improve my presentation for the future. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Derek, who's going to tell us a bit about the model.
All right, so for the first of the metrics that we basically evaluate our app on, these are some more objective metrics that we measured. So the demo that you guys just saw is our web app, so that's all dealing with the API calls to OpenAI. We also have a kind of a local demo version that we've been experimenting with as well. And so up here we just have just some metrics on kind of mostly dealing with the inference on the generating the builder schema before the presentation, just in terms of about how long it takes to generate the bullet points per slide, what the actual output coming back from the models look like. So from this, we can see that the open API calls are typically faster than most of the local models we've tried out. They also tend to give the most bullet points and tend to be the most verbose. That being said, we still found a lot of useful feedback coming from the local models, and especially being able to bypass kind of have to pay for those API calls. We're seeing a lot of promise in things that we can fine-tune and build upon with the local models. Like I said, we were just using the basic pre-trained versions. We didn't do any fine-tuning at all. So playing around with some of the model parameters, finding data sets specifically for presentations to train on. Like I said, we see a lot of promise in kind of the local setup and able to get to more and more towards that low-cost, free setup for the users. The next metric we kind of went with is actual feedback from users. So we were able to get the app out to some friends, family, fellow TAs, in the last week and a half and let them kind of practice using it for their own presentations. And then just giving them this basic system usability scale survey that they could then fill out on Google Forms afterwards. So just ranging from strongly disagree to strongly agree on some different metrics. Just looking for basically what parts of the app were working well and where we're looking for the most improvement. So we were kind of aiming for a minimum score of 70 in order to land into that acceptable range. And then these are just some of the questions that we got back, some of the responses we got back. And so we actually came out at 75.5, so goal achieved. Right, we got into the acceptable range in terms of positive feedback. So we got a lot of kind of soft agrees and strongly agrees across a lot of different metrics. People felt especially confident using the setup, and they felt like it was useful information that they were getting from it. They felt like they could continue to use this in the future to improve and upon their presenting technique and presenting goals. So with that said, I will pass it back to Isabel to talk about some of the failure cases.
Okay, so we got our web prototype up and working so that we could have users test it and give us some feedback. But we did spend a lot of time this quarter working on finding smaller local models that could run quickly and then also having a local database. Unfortunately, that's not part of our web version, but we do have a local demo version. So also, real-time feedback updates are slower than desired. We'd like those to be a lot faster since it can be a little bit distracting that they're happening a bit late. You're pretty convinced that you've finished a bullet point, but the application doesn't seem to agree, and then you're stuck thinking, am I hallucinating? Is the model hallucinating? Who finished it? And then also our post-presentation quality depends really heavily on the model that we're using. So having a lightweight model may kind of impact our post-presentation quality. And then, again, our current implementation serves primarily as a proof of concept rather than a full production system. And then for future goals, we'd like to develop a downloadable version of LiveCue so that we can take advantage of those local models and local databases that we worked on. We found a really great C++ optimized version of Whisper that was really, really good for ASR, which we were not using in the web version. So it would be nice to get that set up in like a downloadable version. And then we also want to improve response latency for during presentation feedback, which again, one of our issues with the web version is the ASR model that we're using. It's not as accurate as the Whisper model that we were using before. And then we also want to increase privacy by having everything entirely on device and having a local database. And then we'd also like to increase our live feedback tools. So having jargon detection while you're speaking, our app can flag, hey, you just used a word that your audience probably doesn't know. Here's a quick definition you can use to explain it to your users. And also question help, so that if someone asks you a question during your presentation, it can help you, first of all, figure out what their question is and then the best way to answer it. So I'm sort of like whispering in your ear and little hints. So that's everything for LiveCue. Let us know if you have any questions. Yeah,
First of all, great job.
thank you.
Thank you.
The question I had was, I know usually when you present, you have like speaker notes and things like that. So have you guys thought about like the compatibility or integration of like having speaker notes, but also like having like cue part of it?
Yeah, so generally it's not best practice to just read off of your speaker notes, right? So if you're just reading your speaker notes for verbatim, or if you have a lot of info in your speaker notes, you're probably not using them the best way that you're supposed to be using them. So by having the speaker notes be part of the information that we're feeding to the model to generate those like presentation goals, it's making sure that you're sticking to kind of like 3 key things that you should be prompted to like think about during your presentation without being bogged down with like a bunch of text that I have to like sit here and read through while I'm presenting.
And maybe one of the things that we didn't cover as well, but so when the user actually generates those bullet points, they actually have the option to modify them as they see fit. They can add their own, they can remove them, they can reorder them. So it's more of a suggestion from the model, but ultimately the user does have the final say on what actually shows up in their presentation scheme.
Thank you.
Totally unrelated curiosity, what model did you guys end up using for the web version?
Oh, the web version is, we're just calling OpenAI is like, I think it's the 4.0 mini is what's generating most of our stuff right now. We're just making calls out on the OpenAI API. But yeah, you want to talk a little bit about our local model, because that's doing some exciting stuff as well.
Yeah, so for the local models, we've been primarily using a Qwen 3 or Qwen 3.5, anywhere from like 0.6 billion to 2 billion parameters. So that's primarily what we focused on. Haven't really looked out beyond the Qwen space yet on the local side.
Does that answer your question? Yeah, nice. Thank you. Yeah.
I just want to say, really polished app. Thought it looked really cool.
Thank you.
I was wondering, why did you guys not end up using the Whisper and the Quen models in the deployed version?
Yeah, so we did create private services. So for our front end, we're using Vercel, and our back end, we're using Render. Both of them have free versions where you can create full web applications and they can talk to each other, not just static web applications. And a part of Render services, you can create private services, where we made one for our Qwen model and also for our Whisper model. We containerized them using Docker, like we made Docker images, uploaded those, and they ran pretty good. They were just extremely slow because we're using the most demoed version that we can do. And again, we're trying to do all of this as low cost as possible. But they were making calls out and they were transcribing and they were generating bullet points, but they were like so tremendously slower than the OpenAI, and we wanted people to be able to have the experience of what conceptually our app can do, which is why we ended up going with the OpenAI's API calls instead. But excellent question, thank you.
I guess I have 3 things. First is like, I think great application, problem foundation, I think this is like really useful. Also, like, you've done an amazing job with system integration, I think. I was thinking a little bit more about the latency you had, the response latency.
Yeah.
With the speech-based, if you are doing question answering, you know when to actually send the text to the OpenAI API. Basically, someone pushes the enter button, and then that's when you send the thing.
Correct.
In terms of latency, there's this weird issue here where if you send often every word, it's painful in terms of the number of API calls you're calling. But if you wait too long, you're going to see the lag which you're facing. So how did you think about that design decision, and what is the solution you came up with?
Anyone want to take that?
Well, so we definitely, what we ended up using here is definitely on the longer side, we used the 10-second, basically chunks of saying over, trying to make sure that we capture a full sentence within a single call out to the model. But I do believe, like I said, there's a lot of frontiers on which we can optimize and make this a faster product, and part of that would be refining the actual windows that we're working with to send to the to the respective models.
So is the delay we observe because of that 10-second, or
That's
because of the big model? Because that seems 10 seconds is a lot, right?
Yeah, I would say it's a mixture of both. We played around with some of the time chunking stuff, and I think we got the best results with like, I think it was 6 seconds with overlap. So we were overlapping the calls so that they were being able to get context from different windows of stuff. We ended up going with the 10-second over OpenAI on like demos and what people did live. It was actually working pretty well. Like we were able to see like live updating just because OpenAI is able to do incredible things really, really quickly. And this is like fairly low contextual base. Like we're not giving over that much information for it to parse through, and then it's sending back responses fairly quickly. So in an ideal setting, it actually is fairly okay, which is why what Derek said was true. We were trying to capture a sentence, send it over, and come back, and all it's coming back with is a yes or no on whether you finished a presentation goal. And like Isabel said, we're only trying to do like 3 quick bullet points. So the idea is that every presentation slide should only be a couple bullet points, and if it's more than that, it should be moved over to another thing. And that is strictly what we're trying to like push users to do throughout LiveCue is like better presentation practices. So that was why we ended up going with this.
So the numbers you all quoted on the slide, 20, 30, does that include that 10-second?
Yeah, so this is strictly for the builder schema. If you remember inside that little world, we were hitting generate and it was generating us presentation goals per slide. That's the timing constraints on that.
Oh, this is not for the real time?
This is not for the real-time stuff, no. The real-time stuff,
It's primarily determined by the 10-second?
Yeah, so it's the 10-second, and then our response is pretty rapid. Like you can see the interactions on like the render logs is like really just like max a second. So sometimes we can get really great results, and in live demonstrations that we've done or people testing it out, they didn't experience tremendous amount of lags, but like Derek was saying, we do have ways where we can optimize that, and then we want to add more feedback tools. Did you have something?
Yeah, I was going to say that normally when people are giving presentations, they tend to be speaking about a given bullet point for more than 10 seconds. So it's okay that we're like sending out those requests a little less often. It's just that when you're doing a demo version and you're trying to show it really quickly, we're not speaking for like a minute about each bullet point.
Yeah, I would say like this demo in particular was just like the introduction slide. So you normally don't have that much context to give it. So the idea is that you're talking, let's say you're presenting a section. You're talking about a specific bullet point for a while, and once it reaches a certain threshold, it's going to mark that as done. And hopefully you've reached that, and it's able to build that context during that time. Does that make sense? Yeah? We all agree on that.
It looks like maybe if you want to reduce the perceived latency, you can look at the recorded version, and then instead of having a fixed 10-second stuff, if the point is covered pretty quickly, maybe just like pull it faster, like maybe 5 seconds or 3 seconds, so the perceived latency is lower. But good job.
Thank you. Yeah.
Any other questions?
I noticed you guys gave feedback on the pace was a little too fast there. Are you guys just calculating the total number of words or something and have some like standard value for that to compare to?
Yeah, it's a calculation of just like how many words per minute that you're speaking on an individual slide. And then you can kind of gauge, essentially like, there's going to be some slides where you're going to be talking more than others. I think that that's pretty natural. But overall, you should have like an average because each slide should be chunked in such a way that they're like naturally like similar pacing, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
What's next for this project?
Everything.
We have a lot of ideas. So specifically, we built the whole thing to be very modularized. Like each one of the services are microservices that we chunked up and Docker imaged so that we can like use them separately. So the idea would be is that we can build more accessibility tools off of that, making the same call out to a back-end service that we've already developed for some other project, and now we can use it for this project. So the idea is that we can maybe make a jargon detection, but we can also use that, like it can be used within the presentation, but it can also be used on a paper that you're writing or a website that you're developing. We can go through an HTML and tell you if like your words are more complex than others. So the idea is that each new service that we add on just is another piece to the puzzle, and then we can use that to like build out more stuff. Do any of y'all want to share? Yeah.
No, that's good.
That's about it, yeah.
Right. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank y'all.